Let's talk about Goldakova. I think she's going to be an odds-on favorite in the pari-mutuel pool on the day, on Saturday here in America. But what are we learning at the Betfair exchange? What type of price can we get?
Well, I was lucky enough to take some 3-1 a few weeks ago.
Wow.
People were starting to lose a bit of faith. I thought it was a great price.
With the exchange, it can be me and you, and we can put our money where our mouth is regards our opinions.
I don't bet horses at even money, but if the question is back or lay, I'm backing at even money because I'm hearing that the horse should be 2-5.
I'd back him at 9-2, 4-1, 7-2. I like him all the way down to 5-2.
Wow.
That's how much I like Downtown Candy Brown.
Welcome to Racing Roundtable on America's Horse Racing Network, TVG. I'm Todd Schrupp. Racing Roundtable is a topic-driven show. Topics that relate to the world of thoroughbred racing that have a great impact on all of us. The topic this week is exchange wagering, and how appropriate that that would be our topic, because on this day, 3 years ago, Betfair became the parent company of TVG. These two companies launched around the same time. TVG eventually became America's Horse Racing Network, and Betfair became the largest online wagering company in the world. But it wasn't just what they brought as far as their organization, it was the innovation that they brought to the world of wagering as well as the world of thoroughbred racing. Joining us to talk about that innovation surrounding exchange wagering, we have here on our set with us once again, very pleased to have back the CEO of TVG, Mr. Stephen Byrne. Happy anniversary.
Thank you, Todd.
And also with us once again is Tony Olivato. He is the Executive Vice President of Television. He pointed out that last week I got his title just wrong. He said it was a great show, but you got my title wrong. Did I get it right this time?
I'm here just to do the interpreting between the two Brits so people can understand.
And here to provide a beard is Tom Large, who is the director of the U.S. Exchange. Tom, thank you for being here.
Thanks very much.
Okay, I'm going to rely on you two then, bookends here. First of all, exchange wagering. Explain it for those who are not familiar.
No, I don't want to do that. I want to know if this is the first beard we've ever had on TVG since Betfair bought the company, or have we had one before?
Mike Joyce had one, but management told him to shave. So this is not new ground, but Tom is obligated to keep his beard after the show.
Have you ever had one?
I have, but it's usually over vacation. Will you give me permission to grow one for the air?
Just so you know, Todd has one of those beards that grows all the way up to his eyelids, if you've ever seen people like that, and straight down his neckline, so it looks like a shadow from like the rest of his head coming down his neck.
Do I even want to tell this next story, because it'll really probably go the wrong way, but there was one time, I won't tell you why Tony Olivato saw me with my shirt off, but I took my shirt off and he's like, he goes, why are you wearing a sweater underneath? So I am kind of a hairy guy. How did we end up here? This is about exchange wagering. I asked you, Stephen Byrne. I'm going to ask you, Tom, as well. For those out here who wager on racing, obviously a lot of you, what is exchange wagering?
I'm just the kind of frontman that heads up the company. He's the expert on exchange wagering, Tom, and he can explain it a lot better than me.
Okay, well, to start, I mean, the technical definition, according to California law, is an innovative form of player-to-player pari-mutuel wagering. But given that I'm sitting next to Tony, the analogy that he prefers is eBay for bettors. Betfair provides a platform and creates the pools, and then everything else that happens after that is down to the player. The player chooses the odds they want to bet at and the amount they want to bet, and then Betfair just matches together players with opposing opinions.
We are going to get in depth more about exchange wagering because there are other possibilities outside of it. Also, the impact to the world of thoroughbred racing, what it all means to you. We're going to be taking your questions as well. But the one thing we never forget at TVG, there is racing going on. We're going to get to that racing right now with Tom Cassidy.
Thank you, gentlemen. And that is the first good beard on TVG in quite some time. We're going to take you to the harness racing action now at the Meadowlands. Race 4 is coming up next. Pick 5 started off tonight with a 19-1 shot. And then in leg number 2, you get a $25 horse. And in leg 3, you had a horse who was 12-1 on the morning line and went off 4-1, but it was in the third leg. So a good chance of a possible pick 5 carryover for the Big M for tomorrow evening. Let's head on out there for the 4th race right now. Condition Filly and Mayor Pacers, non-winners of 10,000 in the last 5 starts. Summer Hope dropping down for Ronnie Burke. The red hot Yannick Gingras in the bike. I like the 9, Stacked Deck, Timmy Tetrick in the bike. Let's go to Sam McKee for the call. Race 4 at the Meadowlands. Good luck.
And they're off sluggish start for Cool Ashley, who gapped the gate just before the start. First away is April Brook, kicking out for the lead. Gordy's Filly Yenta will press her early. Mano Cornudo 3 wide entering the turn and moving up his shortest distance at the rail as they head around that opening turn. Summer Hope on the inside is 5th. Julia Song, the first timer from New Zealand, is 6th on the inside, followed up by Stack Dak in 7th. Long Shot Rose Rare came away in 8th. Elven Example paces around her, and Cool Ashley 10th and trailing after that tardy beginning. Opening quarter on the board in 27 and 3, and working up on the outside is Mano Cornudo, stretched out to make the lead. Andy Miller has to grab into Gordy's Filly Yenta, trying to yield for that pocket spot second. April Brook is right there racing third. It's the give and go from Andy Miller because Gordy's Filly Yenta is right back out and rolling for the retake, so Mano Cornudo is now back in the second spot. Here comes Summer Hope, first over on the outside for Gingras. She's 4th, 5 lengths from the front. Julia Song waited for that live cover and got it. Shortest distance sits in, kick back just a bit under whip tap urging. Tetrick kicks out the earplugs third over on Stack Dak as they reach the half in 56 and 1. Further back is a sluggish Rose Rare. Elven Example 4th over in the cover flow, and Cool Ashley is trailed throughout as they head around the turn. Gordy's Filly Yenta is 2 moved already, a length and a half clear coming to 3/4. Mano Cornudo is trying to stick with her there in the pocket spot, racing in second. April Brook is locked in on the inside in third. First over on the outside is Summer Hope. Julia Song is following her, 3/4 on the board in 1:24 and 4. And Gordy's Filly Yenta looks strong right now at the top of the stretch, and she's sprinted away to a 3-length lead for Andy Miller, drifting out a bit. Mano Cornudo toward the inside. April Brook is following her up the rail. Julia Song is coming on the outside, and Pierce and Elven Example are gaining late on the far outside. Julia Song coming on. Elven Example is charging up on the far outside. A big rally from Elven Example to win it. Julia Song was second, then Mano Cornudo with Stack Deck, 1:53 and 3.
10-7-6, L of an Example was your winner. Back to Todd and crew for more information on exchange wagering and perhaps some L of examples.
Yeah, in fact, Tom Large was giving us an relevant example about exchange wagering before we went to that race at the Meadowlands. And again, as we said, throughout the show, while we get into the topic, you won't miss any of the live action. So be prepared to wager at tvg.com. But what about traditional parimutuel wagering here in the United States versus the exchange? Can you demonstrate some of the differences between the two?
Sure. So, I mean, the standout difference is that when you're betting into an exchange, you're betting fixed odds. So, as I mentioned previously, the customers, the players, are deciding exactly how much they want to wager, but also the odds that they want to wager at. It gives an element of control to a younger audience of would-be players that need that control, that currently won't bet with parimutuel wagering. The flip side of that is that it means that your bet isn't always guaranteed. So if you're wanting to bet on a horse at say 2-1, and you're asking for odds which are unrepresentative at 4, 5, 6-1, in that circumstance, it's unlikely that you're going to get your bet matched. Obviously, there's a commonality between the two models, what we call backing or wagering for an event to happen. But then a difference on the exchange side. Every single wager has one backer, somebody who thinks that an event will occur. And one layer who's somebody who thinks that an event won't occur. That in itself facilitates a practice called trading, which is basically what you imagine it to be. It's backing at high odds and laying at lower odds. And the main advantage of trading is that it gives people who would perhaps be put off by betting into the parimutuel model and by the art of handicapping. They don't need to handicap in order to be able to see the exchange as a profitable proposition.
So what you're saying is people will bet the same horse to win and to bet in the same race? Yes,
exactly. So if they can predict the way that the odds on a particular horse are going to move, they could be backing it at 10-1, and then backing it later in the day, or sorry, layering it later in the day at 8-1, 5-1, and guaranteeing a profit irrespective of the result in the race.
I mean, the fun thing about the exchange from my perspective is a lot of our viewers are good handicappers, but there'll be several of them like me that aren't very good handicappers, but maybe can read a market pretty well. So it's possible to bet in a horse race and actually not really care that much what the result is, what wins or what loses the race. You're more interested in the market movements before the race. So if you think the guy who did the morning line didn't do a very good job, for example, and people are offering odds that are too big or too small, you can take a position on that. And before the race starts, you just trade out your position like you would on day markets when you're trading stocks and shares. It brings a whole new dynamic to the way that you can bet. And the crucial thing for me is that you can take a price, as Tom alluded to. You know, if you think something should be 3 to 1 and somebody's offering 5 to 1, you're going to take that 5 to 1. If it's 3 to 1 and somebody's only offering you 2 to 1, you're probably going to wait until you get the 3 to 1, or you'll maybe bet something else in the race.
Tony, every horse player has gone through that. You go to the racetrack, you look at the tote board, and you think, well, I'd like to have all the money they're betting to win on that 6 to 5 shot because I don't like that 6 to 5 shot. Or you look at the horse that you liked at 6 to 1 in the morning line, and you're being offered 3 to 1 through the pari-mutuel tote. It would be nice if you get that 6 to 1 through exchange wagering. You can shop.
Right, and I think going back to one of the things Tom was talking about, trading back and forth. How many times do you see a horse open at 6 to 1? And you look at the pick 3 will pays or the pick 4 will pays, and you see that the horse is the second choice in those betting pools, and you say, you look at the person next to you, you say, there's no way this horse is going to be 6 to 1. Well, with the exchange, if you really feel that way, you could bet the horse at 6 to 1. You're now getting 6 to 1 odds. And then let's say the horse does go off as a second favorite and is 5 to 2 or 3 to 1. You could turn around and sell at that price, and you've locked yourself into a no-lose position. So I think it's a great opportunity. It really has to change the way, as a player, we have to look at a race.
One of the nice things, Todd, as well, is that if you also have a view on whether a horse will or won't act on a certain surface, I like betting horses that run on turf racing, for example. Sometimes if a horse likes a soft turf course rather than a fast turf course, and the weather forecast says there's going to be a thunder deluge, you can try and anticipate that and maybe bet the race according to what you think the race conditions are going to be like at the off time. So a horse that might be 10 to 1, you know, in the book before on the morning prices, you know, is going to trade more like at 3 to 1 because there's going to be a deluge, and you're almost betting on the weather changes. There's a number of different aspects to it.
Sir, would you say that exchange wagering attracts a more sophisticated player?
No, I think it attracts some sophisticated players, and it attracts people who also wouldn't ordinarily bet on horse racing. That's the exciting thing for us, bringing people who are financial day traders. They're a different demographic maybe from the horse bettor, but it also appeals to people that just want to get value. If you're a backer, a horse bettor, and you want to get something where the margins are much lower and the odds are on your side, rather than there being a massive amount of takeout, then I think the exchange is the kind of thing that would be interesting and exciting for people. So it caters for all. We have to try and find the right model that works for people that want to have a $2 or $3 bet on a race and they don't want to do anything except have $2 to win on the 5 horse. But we also want to cater for people who almost trade in industrial quantities, if you like, and may have thousands of bets on any one race and take a number of positions on the outcome. And I think we have the product that can cater to all of them.
Since last week's Racing Roundtable, we've been asking for your questions. A number of you emailed in. We've sifted through some of the best, and here is one. We also remind you can call into tonight's show if a question comes to mind. 877-855-2884 is that number. But this email says, how will the exchange wagering interact with the on-track pari-mutuel pools? Will it just be offered for win wagering only? What share of the exchange wagering will go back to the tracks and horsemen? That's a loaded question. But first of all, that point about how will it interact with the pools? If a horse is taking a lot of play on the exchange, will we see that show up in the pari-mutuel pools?
No, so the exchange is basically a standalone pool. There'll be no interaction between the exchange market, or what we call markets on the exchange side, and the pari-mutuel pool. The exchange itself will be restricted to offering win, place and show propositions. We can't take exotic bets on the exchange. The model just doesn't translate that well.
What we've seen, though, in the UK, and right now people are betting on US racing on betfair.com, but they're not doing it from the US. So we don't accept bets from anyone currently in the United States because it's not legal to do so. That doesn't mean people around the rest of the world aren't betting on American racing. They're doing it now, they're doing it with Betfair, and we have a revenue model where the money that should go back to tracks and horsemen does so through the right proper channels. We have agreements with tracks that enable us to do that right now. One of the interesting things is, though, we offer odds on the exchange and we also offer the pari-mutuel tote odds, and you see a number of people taking positions. So if you see a horse that's 8 to 5, you know, on a tote pool and it's a different price on the exchange, then they end up duplicating bets, or they'll try and arbitrage positions so that they get the benefit of both markets. And whilst we're not feeding money from the exchange directly into the tote pools if and when Betfair starts in the US, I think we'll see the same kind of arbitraging going on that we see in the UK and elsewhere around the world.
As we mentioned, we are asking for your phone calls on this topic of exchange wagering, and we have a phone call coming in from a very familiar name in the world of thoroughbred racing. He's an owner, breeder, and some would say an activist in the world of thoroughbred racing. He is Jerry Jamgochian. Join us on the line. Thank you for calling Racing Roundtable, Mr. Jamgochian. What is your question for our panel here?
Good evening to the panel. My question is, because of a lower takeout rate, exchange wagering returns much less purse money per wager. Assuming that exchange wagering comes to California, shouldn't Betfair and other exchange providers financially guarantee the current daily purse levels if the net effect of exchange wagering reduces the amount of purse money generated?
Stephen?
Yes, I would say it should. I think any operator that wants to come into the market should try and work together with the tracks and with the horsemen and come up with a model that gets those guys comfortable. Ultimately, we've got to try and find something that's right for the fans as well as for the tracks, so we don't want to have takeout too high. We can't have the operator making too much money from it, and I think in the first instance, if there is an exchange brought into the US, it'll be several years before Betfair makes a dime out of it because of the investment you have to make to build the thing uniquely for what we want to do here. But Jerry has a point. You know, we want to do something that's fan-friendly and works for the fan, but it has to work for the horsemen and for the racetracks.
Well, that's the thing. The very selling point that you're pointing out for the fans, this lower takeout that you're talking about versus the traditional pari-mutuel model, that would bring up concern for the horsemen and women then.
It would, but just to be completely clear about the question that Mr. Jamgochin had, what we're looking to try and do, if we can in California, is to look at last year's purse levels, see where they were, and actually take a punt. We think the exchange will work and it will be good for horse racing. What we can't guarantee is guarantee purse money for the whole of California horse racing, irrespective of what does or doesn't happen with the exchange. But what we want to do is work with the sport to try and get it to a level that if we take last year's purses at, say, somewhere like Del Mar, and if Del Mar's coming back this year with that same purse level, we would try and bring a Betfair boost to those purses, irrespective of how much business we do or don't do on Betfair in the first year of the exchange operating, so that horse owners and racetrack operators have a guarantee, effectively, that their purse money is going to be higher this year than it was last year, whatever does or doesn't happen on a betting exchange.
And Todd, I think it's important to note, there's obviously a great fear within the racing industry in terms of cannibalization, but I think it's important to mention that we're only talking about win, play, show betting, and it's only win, play, show betting on the internet in California. So it's not a huge number that we're working with. If you looked at those bets in California last year, it's about 3% of the total pools. So I think that the upside is tremendous and the downside is not as significant as people think.
I can't tell you how many times in talking about exchange wagering over the past year, someone has said, well, I can bet a horse to finish sixth. That's not what we're talking about here.
No. Players are specifying whether they think, if they're backing, then they're betting that the horse will win the race. If they're laying, then they're saying that the horse won't win the race. It doesn't matter what position the horse comes in. It's just it's a binary act. It's first or not first.
Let's stay on the numbers because we have an email addressing that subject, and our next email uses a term that you've heard a lot, juice. It can apply in a lot of areas of playing. But this is Wayne in Oregon. Will the juice, the percentage, decrease as the size of the wager increases? Will juice average 10% like it does with the over-under wagers offered in Nevada? So essentially juice, in this case, meaning commission.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're planning to charge a 10% headline rate, and that 10% will be applied proportional to a customer's net winnings in any given market. But on top of that, we will offer what we're calling player pool credits, which will be calculated at the end of the month. And the more you win and lose throughout the course of the month, the higher your player pool credit will be. And the effect of that will be that we will charge players somewhere between 5 and 10%.
It's similar to a poker rakeback. I think people out there that play poker will understand the concept where you put an amount of money into the pool while you play, and then at the end of it you get bonus back from the operator. We want to do the same thing for players, but we want to keep the headline rate at 10% to start with because it's fairly simple. It is more than we charge elsewhere in the rest of the world, but we're doing it really so that we can try and find the right way to get money back to the sport, and we think that we can do it as well in a way that is engaging to players and gives them a good value proposition, because the takeout on the exchange is going to be a lot less than it currently is.
On the subject of getting back, when we come back, I want to ask you about the players who have gone offshore. It has become a big topic in the industry. What about the sizable players who have left the pari-mutuel pools to play offshore? Would exchange wagering maybe bring them back? I'll pose that question to Stephen Byrne when we return. A reminder, Turfway Park is coming up next. Get to TVG.com to play. We'll have more Racing Roundtable right up after this. Welcome back to Racing Roundtable. The topic this week, exchange wagering. We want your questions. Call us in on the show right now, 877-855-2884 if you want to participate into tonight's show. Joining us now on the set is Andy Cunningham. Andy Cunningham is the Director of Integrity at Betfair. And Andy, explain that position and what the department's about.
So my team's basically responsible for monitoring all the bets on Betfair's betting exchange, looking for unusual betting patterns, and if there's anything that's suspicious, reporting it to sporting bodies. So for horse racing, the British Horse Racing Authority in the United Kingdom, and then providing the details to them to help them carry out the investigation.
We had a question concerning, will the exchange involve other sports? Now, obviously over in Europe it does, and you had a recent deal with the International Olympic Committee?
Yes, so what Betfair does, we sign information sharing agreements with sports that allow us to effectively, if we detect an issue, give the names of the customers placing the bets, which is important for them to be able to carry out a thorough investigation. And we recently signed one of these agreements with the International Olympic Committee for the London 2012 Olympics.
And that is something that gets mentioned, I think, far too often, and that if exchange wagering comes to the parimutuel sport here in America, it's going to lead to all kinds of chicanery. But instead, it can almost be a safeguard, it sounds like, what I'm listening to Andy say.
I mean, I think the opposite is the case. I think we shine a light on cheating. It isn't a cheats charter, and we want to hide them out of the sport. Andy's being a little modest. I mean, he's worked for years to try and persuade the IOC that they should engage with us. They know that betting is going on the Olympics like it is on other sports, and we think the right way to do that is to regulate it properly and to give the regulator, or in this case the IOC, access to information. If they have any concerns, they can come and interrogate our data, and we'll try and hand out the cheats as best we can, and he's done a terrific job with them. In fact, he's heading back there, I think, next week to try and do stage 2 of our work with the IOC. And we want to work, obviously, with the regulators here in the US and give them as much information as they want to make sure that if and when the exchange is launched here, it can be policed properly.
And it's just going to be horse racing to start, to be clear on that, here in America, and when exchange wagering gets started.
Absolutely, yes.
We got to get back to horse racing. We'll come back to exchange wagering questions, and we'll have one for Tony Olivato about how it affects television coverage. For example, will Tom Cassidy be on the air as much if we have exchange wagering? Certainly right now in this parimutuel format, TC, you're doing a great job.
I appreciate the kind words. Thank you, gentlemen. Race 7 at Turfway Park coming up in just a couple horses actually left to load. And Meadowlands, race 5, they're behind the gate, and they're going off as well. We're waiting on one horse to go in here in the 7th at Turfway. Condition claimers 4 and up, which have never won 2 races. They're going 1 mile over the always fast poly track. Your favorite is the 1A, Jack's Soul. Let's go to Mike Battaglia for the call. Good luck.
There at the post. And they're off. For the lead from between horses, that's Jack's Soul. Moving through from the inside, Foggy State of Mind. Then it's Broadway Royal up on the outside, Big Blue Fever. Moving into the first turn, Foggy State of Mind gets the lead a length. Jack's Soul runs second. Then up from the outside, that's 8th Rock, who moves into third. From the inside, Broadway Royal is fourth. Then up from the extreme outside, that's Busy Being Fabulous with Go-Go Olmo down the back stretch. On the outside now, Jack's Soul puts ahead in front of Foggy State of Mind. Go-Go Olmo moves up, takes third. Then from the outside, Busy Being Fabulous is fourth. From the rail, that's Big Blue Fever. Then up from the outside, Old Harley. Also gaining ground from the extreme outside, here comes East Coast Trail. Moving for the stretch, Jack's Soul has the lead by 2.5. Foggy State of Mind. East Coast Trail is in the center of the track in third. Then up from the inside, Old Harley with a furlong to run. It's Jack's Soul in front, then East Coast Trail, Foggy State of Mind, Jack's Soul in front, and East Coast Trail second. Jack's Soul wins by 2.5 over East Coast Trail, Foggy State of Mind. Photo for fourth.
1A, 2, 3. The favorite, Jack's Soul, wins the 7th at Turfway. Quickly over to the Big M, where the 5th race was going off. Condition trotters, numbers of 16,000 in the last 5. The breaker there is the 3, Salutation Hanover. Good luck.
And they're off. Dave Miller sends his horse, Ashling, from the outside for the lead. Proud Moment is there between them. Manningly shoots out for Sears. So these three are across the track entering the turn. So UDV on the inside is trotting in fourth. Live Jazz is unhurried in the early stages, fifth. Followed up sixth by Sugar Queen Gabby. Seventh in behind him is Mythical Hall. Then it's 4 Stars Robo and Salutation Hanover. Dug himself a big hole with that break behind the gate, and he is the trailer as they head around the turn. And there's a 4-horse breakaway up front. Manningly is on top in 27-3. In the 2-hole is Proud Moment, who's 2 lengths from him second. Ashling gaps 3 lengths further back in third. Then So UDV. Live Jazz struggled on the opening turn. He has to be 8 lengths behind the top 4. Sugar Queen Gabby sits patiently behind him. So in another zip code right now is Mythical Hall. He's followed up in 8th by 4 Stars Robro, and Salutation Hanover trails the field. So the front 4 continue to draft together, and Manningly relaxes the pace in the second quarter. Proud Moment sits tight for Brandon Simpson, bump drafting his helmet in second. 57-3, a 30-second second quarter breather up front, and Manningly got rough, and he broke. Manningly broke on a non-pressured lead, so Proud Moment inherits the front entering the far turn. Ashling slides up into that second spot with So UDV third. Live Jazz on the inside trying to get going on this turn, but gaps away again between horses. Sugar Queen Gabby looking to move up, and Mythical Hall is about 8 lengths from the front right now as well. It's Proud Moment 2 lengths clear of Ashling as they head through the 3-quarter marker, and Proud Moment leads the way in 1:27.4, a minute and 1 medal half. Technical advantage to Proud Moment. Ashling is tracking along with 2 lengths to make up in that pocket spot second. So UDV third, then Live Jazz racing in fourth. Sugar Queen Gabby is fifth on the outside, but it's Proud Moment with a 16th to go. Ashling trying to test him from the pocket, being pushed home there. Proud Moment still in front. Ashling trying to do something with him. Proud Moment. Ashling is surging. Proud Moment and Ashling at the line. Proud Moment held off Ashling. So UDV third, Sugar Queen Gabby fourth, 1:56.1.
6-9-4 Proud Moment does hold on. It just went official. You can find prices for both that race at the Meadowlands and race 7 from Turfway Park on the web at tvg.com. Let's head back over to the gentleman for more information on exchange wagering.
And one of the unique aspects of exchange wagering is the idea of in-play wagering, and that would have been an exciting race for that. We'll kind of explain that a little bit further, but it also ties into how will coverage at TVG change, Tony Olivato, if indeed exchange wagering comes to be?
Well, I think coverage on TVG has already changed. You've seen in the Open today, you saw some of the segments that we're already doing on TVG where we're talking about playing or laying a horse. But I think it's important to mention that we're not going to suddenly become the exchange network. It's important to keep in mind that only 1 or 2 parts of our audience, California and possibly New Jersey, will be betting the exchange. So we really don't want to alienate the rest of the country. But I think that things are going to change for bettors, and they're going to change for our announcers as well. Whereas in the past, as a handicapper, when you picked up the racing form, if you thought a horse didn't have a chance, you would just draw a line through that horse and go on to the next horse. With exchange betting, it's not just every race that's a betting opportunity, every horse is a betting opportunity, because if you don't like a horse, you can try to determine what odds are the best odds to lay that horse at. So that's the kind of things that our announcers are going to have to educate the betting public on. But in the end, we're still talking about horse race and the horses in the race.
And we want to be talking to you. Give us a call here on Racing Roundtable if you have a question about exchange wagering. The number to call, 877-855-2884. That's 877-TALK-TVG, 877-855-2884. We'll put you on the air with us if you have a question for our experts on exchange wagering. Stephen, I want to get to something that I mentioned earlier. You talked about how we could open up basically the sport to all levels of players, but what about those players who have left the traditional markets here in the United States and gone offshore, as we call it, and we're not seeing the benefit of the money that they handle? Do you think some of those players would come back if there was exchange wagering?
Yeah, I think they would, because the people who do that are value hunters, really. They want to go where the money is. They go offshore because the way the model's set up there, they're able to get rebates that operators like ourselves can't give them onshore because of how much we have to give back to the racing industry. So we don't have the margins to do the same kind of rebating that some of the offshore guys do. They take more risk by going offshore because they don't know who those companies are, and something could happen to them and their money may or may not be secure, but they're prepared to do it because they think they get value. We think we can offer value as far as the exchange is concerned in the win markets. So we're hoping that some of the players that currently go offshore would want to come back and start betting conventionally back on horse racing pools so that racing gets its fair share of revenue. It's one of the things that drives me nuts, really, about US racing here. You know, everybody talks about takeout and revenue share and doing the right thing and supporting the sport, and yet the sport itself colludes with all these rebate shops. It gives them massively discounted rates and allows people who put large amounts of money into pools to go and do it offshore, and it kind of shoots itself in the foot somewhat. And I hope that over time we can persuade people to work with companies like ourselves to try and fight to win that money back, because people tell me the business offshore is as big as the online business onshore, and we need to be doing something about that, because that's money that's being filtered away to who knows who.
And I think it's important to mention that some of that money that's being bet is not even hitting the pools. So it's gotten to the point now where if you look at California compared to where we were years ago, if on a Thursday afternoon you wanted to bet a few $1,000s, $3,000, $4,000 on a horse to win, you could not do that the way the pools are set up now. And I think it's forcing a lot of big players to bet with illegally with bookies and places like that, where they're betting win bets. I think with the exchange that the pools will be a lot bigger on the win side, and it's going to allow people to make those bets and return money back to horse racing that isn't coming now.
We'll get to the emails in just a moment, but we have a phone call coming in right now here locally. Patrick in Glendale, California. Patrick, thank you for calling Racing Roundtable. What's your question?
Yeah, basically my main question was, I know in the stock market, the computer trading is, very prevalent at this point in time, but basically whoever's closest to the main hub of the computing system has an advantage. Where's your main hub? Would any players have an advantage with, say, a more sophisticated system?
Well, talk about the technology that Betfair uses, because it really is tied into the trading technology that we see on Wall Street.
It is. I mean, we're introducing something called an API, which people like Patrick are probably fairly familiar with. That's just a way of people that want to use software or robotic trading to plug directly into the exchange, to download massive bits of information because they're data hungry, and to do that in as efficient a way as possible. Those guys like to know things like where your data center is for the kind of reasons that Patrick's talking about. When he's talking about an advantage, it's like 1,000th of a second or something like that you're talking about in some instances. The data center is going to be based in California. It's sitting in Sacramento. We're being completely open about that. And if people want to put their software or their computers somewhere close because they think it will or won't give them an advantage, then good luck to them. We think we have enough processes in place to try and mitigate against that and make the system as open and as fair as possible, so that it's a level playing field and everybody can benefit from it. But we're going to be in Sacramento, and we think actually that any exchange operator that wants to come to the US, because California looks like it's going to be the first state to open up and offer exchange wagering in the United States, I think any exchange operator that wants to be credible, wants to be taken seriously, should be building its infrastructure in California and putting jobs in California.
Andy, obviously this topic that Patrick brought up, I imagine, is very important to your department.
Yeah, absolutely. We use the technology at Betfair. Every staff member, for example, is monitored to control their betting activity, people who have access to systems, etc. And we use the technology to carry out our integrity functions. The technology is phenomenal. We have a complete audit trail of every bet that's placed, and we can use that in real time to look for anomalies and anything that's suspicious to have a deeper look into, and then ultimately, if there is something suspicious, give it to the authorities, the sporting authorities, to investigate.
We have another question about integrity in thoroughbred racing and how exchange wagering might play into that. And this is an email from Tim in Kansas City. He emailed us, with exchange wagering, I'm most worried about the temptation for horsemen to make unethical wagers. Could they run a horse that's not 100% just to cash in on information the public wouldn't know about?
Yes, is the answer. They could do that, but they could do it now, and I think frankly, they do it now, and they find ways of betting into pools that isn't properly monitored and it's regulated, but it's not tracked and traced in the way that we think it ought to be, and certainly in the way that it would be with the exchange. But I think Andy and his team are pretty good at shining a very powerful light on that kind of activity if it were happening on the exchange on any kind of a regular basis, and I think we can root it out, but he can talk more effectively and efficiently than I can about it.
Yeah, absolutely. If someone knows has information that a horse isn't going to win, they could obviously come on to Betfair and lay that horse to try and profit, but they could also try and profit in the pari-mutuel pools of that information. And if they do it at Betfair, with the technology that we have, we will identify it, catch them essentially, and report them to the relevant authority.
I want to talk about, oh, go ahead, Tony.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's one of the things that I hear all the time is I don't like the idea of being able to lay a horse, being able to bet on a horse to lose. But what people don't realize is we're doing that every day in the United States anyway. If Todd and I are playing a pick 4 and there's 8 horses in the race and we're using 7 of the 8 horses, we are betting that 8th horse to lose. And if you bet a horse, if you back wheel a horse in an exacta, if that horse wins, you are going to lose, the horse you're back wheeling. So you're betting on horses to lose all the time. It just, for some reason, it just hits the Americans, our public a little bit differently when it's phrased this way.
Well, why is there that fear out there on some of these points that Tony makes? Why is there this resistance and misinformation that tends to be circulated as well?
I think the genesis of it really comes from our competitors back in Europe, who put a lot of misinformation out about Betfair and what it was and what it wasn't, because they saw us being a threat to them. Previously, there'd been a closed shop of bookmakers in the fixed odds world. They deal in secrecy. They deal in insider trading and insider information, and they don't like it when something like Betfair comes along and it makes all that stuff as public as it can possibly be. One of the things that's fantastic about the exchange is that everything is transparent. So if somebody comes on and is trying to lay for a lot of money, or even a small amount of money, a horse at a particular price, everybody can see it. They can't see, we can see who the person is that's doing it, the public can't see who it is, but if you go on the night before a race and something that should be an even money favourite is being offered up at 10 to 1 by somebody who thinks they know it isn't going to win, then people aren't silly, they can smell a rat and they probably won't want to get involved in that market. And I think it's kind of, you know, as old as human history, that if people get the opportunity to cheat, that they will. What we want to try and do is make sure we hand cheats out the sport. There's a lot of them around now that are doing all sorts of stuff that sometimes people talk about openly and publicly. Mostly the racing industry prefers to keep it quiet, to keep a lid on it. And I think one of the issues, and it's an interesting one, that revolving around a company like Betfair, is all to do with PR and perception. They say that, you know, integrity issues are related to Betfair, but really what we do is we just open it all up and we try and highlight when there's nefarious activity going on. It's going on, whether Betfair's here or whether it isn't. We just want to try and make sure that we stop it when we're around.
And just to pick up, to highlight the transparency, you know, Betfair allows regulators, horse regulators, or whatever sport it may be, to see every bet going through Betfair over £100 in the UK on their sport. So completely open and transparent. They can see the wagers going through in real time at an account level, so they can see if, you know, if an account suddenly appeared that they haven't seen before and is risking a large amount of money, they can see that themselves.
I think what's disappointing is that it feels like people aren't worried that that people in the industry are going to start cheating. It's that they're worried that people are going to get caught, which is a little disappointing. It's, you know, it would make me say, well, then why are we drug testing? You know, it's so, you know, to Stephen's point, there's always that temptation that's going to be there. What Betfair will do is it's allowing for an electronic paper trail that will lead back to the person that does it if they decide to do that.
One of the more exciting aspects of exchange wagering, as we mentioned earlier, is the possibility of in-play wagering. And when we return, we'll explain what that is. Tom Large will be joining us on the set. This is Racing Roundtable. Don't forget, racing action coming up at the Meadowlands. You can play right now at TVG.com. We'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back to Racing Roundtable on America's Horse Racing Network, TVG. Back to your questions. The subject is exchange wagering. This comes from Annie in Washington. First, congratulations on your great show. Thank you very much, Annie. I currently live in Washington, and I was wondering if exchange wagering is only legal in California. Will I be able to place an exchange wager if I am in Washington, but betting on a California track? Joining me here on the set is the CEO of TVG, Mr. Stephen Byrne, also Tony Olivato, Executive Vice President of Television. We welcome back as well Tom Large, Director of the U.S. Exchange. So let me start with you, Stephen, to that question.
No is the answer. You can't bet if and when an exchange is launched in California unless you're a resident and living in the state of California. You can't do it from Washington. The only exception to that is if your state legitimizes exchange wagering. So there's legislation already being passed in New Jersey that says exchange wagering is allowed, assuming you have an arrangement with the horseman and with the regulator and the tracks. If and when that happens, customers in New Jersey and in California will be able to commingle their money and share that pool, and they can both bet in the exchange. But if you're from a non-exchange wagering state like Washington, you can't bet on the exchange until that's been legitimized in your individual state.
If you were a betting man, and I know you are, What do you think will come first? Who will have it first, California or New Jersey?
I think it'll be California. New Jersey's a little bit dysfunctional as far as its politics and racing politics is concerned, and the state has, some challenges to do with what is or isn't going to happen with Monmouth and the Meadowlands. They were really innovative and very pioneering and were the first to actually embrace the concept of an exchange with the legislator, but the process has stalled a little bit while the Sports Authority in New Jersey tries to work out who's going to run the racetracks. I think once they've done that, we're in a good position to start having a dialogue with the tracks, and we've already had conversations with the likes of Mr. Gorell, who runs the Meadowlands, and with the Sports Authority, who currently run Monmouth Park. It'll probably be sometime later in the summer in New Jersey when something happens. We're hoping it'll be May in 2012 when California kicks in.
Let's go to New Jersey. On the subject of racing there, we have the Meadowlands. TC, what's up next?
Well, up next is the start of the guaranteed $50,000 Pick 4 at the Meadowlands, races 6 through 9. And keep in mind, tomorrow night, there's a Pick 5 carryover. Over $16,500 will be on the line for a carryover in the Pick 5 tomorrow, races 1 through 5 at the Meadowlands. But right now, we're looking at the Mares Preferred, the field of 10 heading to the post. Higher and Higher is your even money favorite from the inside with 7-2 on the morning line. This is a 5-year-old daughter of Western Terror who went 9 for 25 last year, earned over $326,000. She's 1 for 1 in 2012. Now comes in off of a Filly Mare Open handicap win at Dover Downs. She'll go up to the Big M and try the Preferred. She's even money. Your second choice is the 6, Ginger and Fred, who looks to make it 3 in a row. The red-hot Yannick Gingras in the bike. Let's go to Sam McKee for the call. The Mares Preferred, pace $25,000 on the line. Good luck in the guaranteed $50,000 Pick 4.
The post lined up in behind the gate to kick off the Pick 4, and here they come. And they're off strong start for KAYLA'S Dream, who is flat out smoking off the wings for Campbell, trying to kick around everybody before the opening turn. Symphony in Motion left well. Also an Omen Hanover in between horses, so KAYLA'S Dream has to back off. Campbell trying to wrestle her down and doing so to drop in third. Higher and Higher gap slightly in the early stages fourth. She's on hurried early. Another 2 back to Cause She Can fifth. Billmar Scooter is 6th on the inside. Then it's Ginger and Fred 7th as Sears taps the brakes up front with Symphony in Motion. So Higher and Higher takes to the outside for the 4th spot, the quarter in 27-1. Racing in 8th on the inside is up front Kelly Joe, then Ideal Newton, and Shaky Hanover is the trailer, and Higher is the new leader as Daryl Beer points her to the front and clears at the midpoint of the back stretch. Symphony in Motion yields for that pocket in second. Omen Hanover is racing in third. 2 more lengths to KAYLA'S Dream in fourth. Cause She Can comes first over on the outside. Ginger and Fred picks up that cover to draft with. A rail ride throughout in 7th for Billmar Scooter. Third over is up front Kelly Joe racing in 8th. The half in 56 seconds flat. Ideal Newton is 9th on the inside, and Shaky Hanover is the trailer, and Higher is 2 lengths clear as they head around the final turn. Kicking out the earplugs is Symphony in Motion, showing the whip there in second. Omen Hanover's right on her back third. Cause She Can stalled a bit right now, first over, so Ginger and Fred looks 3 wide, well before the 3/4 marker. She launches her bid with 5 lengths to make up on Higher and Higher. KAYLA'S Dream is jammed in. Up front, Kelly Joe is 7th on the outside, 1:24.4 for 3/4, and Higher is 4 lengths the best at the top of the stretch. Symphony in Motion on the inside, trying to hang in there. Ginger and Fred's coming on the outside. Higher is drifting a bit and shortening stride. Here comes Ginger and Fred in with a puncher's chance on the outside. Cause She Can between them. Higher, Ginger and Fred working up to her wheel. Higher, Ginger and Fred surging late on the outside at the line. Higher. Ginger and Fred right there in second. Cause She Can third. 1:53.1. 1:53.1 the final time. 1:62. Higher does hold on to make it 2 for 2 in 2012. Let's take a look at the replay here. Deep in the lane where you have the 6 on the outside, Ginger and Fred closing late. That's Cause She Can in the middle at 14-1. This is how it will finish. 1-6-2, 3-5 favorite holds off to a chalky start here to the guaranteed $50,000 Pick 4 at the Meadowlands. Let's head out to Florence, Kentucky, where we have a post parade for the upcoming 8th race, a maiden special weight field. 4-year-olds and up. They're going a mile over the always fast poly track. Here is Day's Ride. This one will start off returning to maiden special weight company after finishing 4th in allowance optional claiming event last time out. Mac Dara is the 2, a first-time starter, 4-year-old son of Woodman. Has 4 works on the tab. Nothing to get too excited about. 12-1 right now. The 3 is Pledge of Truth. First start off the barn change to Jeff Waring from Malcolm Pierce. And this one goes turf to Polly, heading out to Turfway 3-1. Victor LeBron in the saddle. And that one was 6-5 on the morning line, currently 3-1. BB the King was 15-1 and is 5-1 right now.
stretching out to a mile after going 6 furlongs last out. Caught Me Looking as a second-time starter. Debuted on the grass at Indiana Downs last time out. That was on June 8th of last year. Here's the 6, Turf Elite. Constantino Roman looking for another winner on the card. First-time Lasix for this 4-year-old son of Crypto Clearance. Hot Juan is the 7. Gets Gino's checkmark. 9-1 here. Second-time starter. First start since November 27th and first start over the synthetic surface at Turfway, but has been training there. So 5 minutes until the 8th race at Turfway Park. Time now to answer some more of your exchange wagering questions. Todd?
And we had someone phone in, but then they said they didn't want to stay on the phone, but they wanted to have their question heard. And the question kind of ties into something we covered a little bit earlier, and they pointed out that they don't necessarily see this exchange wagering as appealing to casual players. They think it'll appeal to whales, the higher-end players.
Well, no, that's very much not the case. We accept players of all sizes on the exchange. In fact, the vast majority of our exchange players in the UK are relatively small or recreational players. We have a minimum bet of it'll be around $2 or $3 in the US, and so provided you're prepared to wager that amount or more, you're more than welcome to come and bet on the exchange.
Yeah, shortly after Betfair started and pioneered exchange wagering, another company set up, which is called BetDAC. And it positioned itself as a different kind of exchange, and it was specifically for high rollers. It was meant to try and put together, you know, the great, the good, and the rich from right around the world. And it's kind of stalled and stagnated as an operating model, and they learned very quickly that they need to go out for the mass market and find recreational players in order to make the thing viable. And you know, as far as the world is concerned, there's about, I don't know, 42 or 43 betting exchanges, and currently we've got about 90% of the global market at Betfair, and we've got that kind of market share, I think, specifically because we actually target the recreational player much more so than we do the heavy hitter.
Earlier we were talking about heavy hitters that have taken their business offshore and out of the American pools. And while we were talking about that, a gentleman who is very close to that part of the industry was listening. His name is Dick Powell. He is on the phone now. Dick, please tell us who you work for and what you do.
I work for Racing and Gaming Services, also known as RGS. And yes, we are offshore, but all of our money is commingled. We pay all appropriate withholdings, taxes, everything else. And I think when you throw around the term offshore, you then lump us in with the offshore pirates who do not pay into the racing industry. We've paid hundreds of millions of dollars back to racetracks and purse structures. And it's just a confusing issue when people talk offshore. We get lumped in with the bad guys, and we're like any other ADW. We just happen to have outsourced our phone operation down in St. Kitts.
Well, I would disagree, though, Dick. You're not like every other ADW. If you look at TVG as an example, in California, we're paying, if a resident of California bets on California track, we're paying, based on a 20% takeout, 14.5% back to the racing industry. I guarantee that RGS is paying a lot less than that. And what really disturbs me is a lot of times we're always hearing people saying, well, the ADWs need to pay their fair share. When in fact, if you look at an outfit like RGS, I guarantee you a lot of your customers, if not the majority of your customers, are watching TVG and betting with you and paying a lower rate back to California racing or whatever racing jurisdiction they're betting into. So I would disagree that when you make the statement that you are like the other ADWs. I would agree, though, that there is a difference between the pirate outfits and what you guys do, that you are returning something to the industry, but let's not put you in the same class as an ADW or a TVG.
Tony, don't belittle what we're paying relative to all the other ADWs out there. In that one specific instance, yes, you're definitely right. But, I mean, I live in New York. What do you think the OTBs in New York pay for horse racing signals?
Well, but first, we're not talking about the OTBs. I believe the OTBs aren't even running right now, if I understand correctly. But when you made the comparison to the ADW business, which is people watching from home and betting from home, which is what I believe people are doing with RGS. They're at home, they're betting on the races, they're watching TVG, or they're watching HRTV, and the racing industry is getting a smaller cut.
Most of our people are pretty sophisticated. They're online. They have computer streaming. I'm not saying people don't watch TVG, but there's a number of ways of getting the picture into your house. And we, you know, when you confuse us with the offshore pirates who are really hurting racing, and racing's done nothing to address that issue, then I have to call it and defend. That's what we're doing.
But Dick, you would agree that the rebate shops do pay a lot less back to the racing industry from a percentage standpoint than a company like TVG does.
In the instance you gave, yes. I'm not familiar with what your other host fees are around the country where you don't have to pay source market fees or anything else like that. But, I mean, Tony, we're squeezed like everybody else, and I'm pretty familiar with the New York market and what the people around here pay for signals, and we're much, much higher. But the point is that we are paying, and the information that was given out before indicated we weren't paying anything.
Dick, thank you so much for representing your view, and I think some RGS customers want to see the 8th at Turfway, so we're going to do that for them right now. Tom Cassidy, what we have there?
We have the 8th race field here, maiden special weight event, 4-year-olds and up, going 1 mile over the poly track. The favorite is Days Ride. It was even money on the morning line, returning to maiden special weight company after running in an allowance optional claiming event last time out. Let's go to Mike Battaglia for the call. Good luck.
And they're off. Days Ride was off slowly. For the lead, that's BB the King from the outside, through from the rail, McDara, then between horses, Pledge of Truth, followed by Turf Elite, Hot One, and after that bad start, Days Ride is the trailer into the first turn. The leader is BB the King, got the first quarter in 24-3. From between horses into second, that's Pledge of Truth. Caught Me Looking runs third ahead. Hot One is fourth. Then on the inside, Pledge of Truth fifth. Days Ride is sixth. McDara now trails. Down the backstretch, BB the King by a length. Caught Me Looking second ahead. Turf Elite third. Pledge of Truth gains ground. So does Days Ride. 2.5 back to Hot One and the trailer McDara. Into the turn, BB the King, Caught Me Looking. Now Days Ride gains up on the outside third. Pledge of Truth down along the rail runs fourth. 3 lengths back to Turf Elite in fifth. Moving into the stretch, BB the King on the outside now. Days Ride gets the lead. Days Ride, BB the King still right there with Caught Me Looking. Pledge of Truth has dropped back. It's Days Ride in front, then Caught Me Looking. Days Ride wins by a length and a half under Julio Felix, finishing second. Caught Me Looking, then BB the King.
154 Days Ride gets the victory, returning to maiden special weight company. More Racing Roundtable right after this quick break on TVG.
Welcome back to Racing Roundtable on America's Horse Racing Network, TVG. I'm Todd Trupp. So thank you very much. Thank you so very much for making this show a hit so far. We've received a lot of response with the emails and a lot of great phone calls tonight. The topic is exchange wagering, and we go back to the phone again, this time from Indiana. It's Billy. Billy, thank you for calling Racing Roundtable. What's your question?
My question, Todd, is to make sure that I understand this. Just say, example, I don't like this horse, and he's 4-1, and I bet $100 on this horse at 4-1, and he does lose. I get 4-1 odds.
Tony, explain that.
No, you're basically, what you would be doing, Billy, is you're offering people odds on a horse. So you would say, if the horse is 4-1, say the horse is 4-1, you would offer $100 at 4-1 odds. So if you had $400 in your account, you need to have the money to match the bet. The horse loses, you would actually win $100. So you're giving whatever the odds are. Now, if the horse, let's say it was a horse like a Zenyatta that was a 1-5 favorite, and you thought Zenyatta was going to lose, then you could offer someone 2-5, and if the horse loses at $200, you would win $500. So you're basically offering the odds that are available and paying out accordingly.
And Tom, as you pointed out at the top of the show, when we explained exchange wagering, you don't always get matched up. So Billy could be out there offering 9-2, and maybe no one takes him up on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of the game and the excitement. So the market tends to form around a price that's consensus between backers and layers. And then part of the art is if you think the horse should be a particular price, is kind of entering your bet into the market, seeing if it gets matched. If it doesn't, you can adjust the odds and adjust your position over the course of the market.
Because of the overwhelming number of questions and interest in the topic of exchange wagering, we're going long on Racing Roundtable, but one of the most fascinating aspects is in-play wagering, and we give you a little bit better of an idea of what that is with Greg Wolf looking back at Zenyatta's win in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Consider the 2009 Breeders' Cup Classic. At the bell, when all wagers into the U.S. totes ceased, the final odds for Zenyatta were 5-2, and Rip Van Winkle's tote odds were 3-1. However, odds for Zenyatta to win on Betfair's exchange were valued at 5-1, and Rip Van Winkle's exchange price was just over 4-1. Zenyatta's odds continued to climb into the first turn.
And Zenyatta is dead last. Zenyatta last, got to be giving them about 10, 11 lengths start.
At which time her exchange odds peaked to just under 9-1. Meanwhile, Rip Van Winkle's odds, running second for the entire length of the backstretch, climbed slightly to 9-2. Then, in the final turn, Rip Van Winkle began to fade. His in-play odds for winning climbed into double, triple, and then finally quadruple digits.
Zenyatta gets a lot of ground to make up. Zenyatta, if she wins this, she'll be a super horse.
Turning for home, Zenyatta's odds were valued at 6-1 just before she began to make her move. And then she made history. In the stretch, with every stride, her in-play odds fell dramatically.
Think about that for a moment. There was no point in Zenyatta's career that you could have even imagined getting 9-1 on her, but with in-play wagering, that was possible in the 2009 Breeders' Cup Classic. Tom, we spent a lot of time talking about getting matched up on a price at the beginning of the day, doing the price shopping. How popular is in-play wagering?
It's extremely popular. For me, it's by far and away the most exciting thing about exchange wagering. Currently today in the UK, around 20 to 25% of the total amount that's bet on horse racing happens during the race. But what that doesn't tell you is the amount that happens before the race, because there's players out there predicting what's going to happen. They might be backing a horse at 8-1 and hoping that it's going to break well, and if it does, it gives them the opportunity to lay it off. The video there itself, it gives a good representation, but it doesn't quite highlight the excitement and the rate at which the odds changed. The graphic probably updated once every 2 or 3 seconds to show how the odds were unfolding. But the odds are 100% real time. They'll be changing 30, 40 times a second on the actual exchange.
Well, when exchange wagering comes to America for the first time, how often will players be able to make in-play wagers?
Well, we hope every time there's a race, every time there's an off of a race, they'll be able to do it in the win market, in the place market, and in the show market. But didn't it make the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end just watching Zenyatta there again and seeing that? I know it's a few years old now.
It made the hair on my neck stand up. Why couldn't I got 9-1? I almost feel like if you're a sharp player and you know, it seems like if you're playing a horse that comes from behind, there's a great chance of getting an overlay if you're betting in play. And if you're a good pace handicapper and you know a horse is going to be on the lead, to Tom's point, you could bet him before the race at high odds and then lay him off when he's got the lead in the race.
We have a phone call that is waiting from New Jersey, but we also have a race that is waiting in New Jersey. We'll get to the racing action first. We'll come back with a phone call. Racing Roundtable will continue in just a moment. A question about exchange wagering, our topic this week. TC, it looks like the starter has called the field forward in race 7 at the Big M.
He sure has. These are conditioned affiliate mayor Pacers, numbers of 17,000 in the last 5 starts. The 3, Reilly's Daughter, your 5-2 favorite heading to post time. I like the 2, JK Sound of Music, Ron Pierce driving for Linda Toscano. Second leg of the guaranteed $50,000 pick 4. They're behind the gate. Let's go to Sam McKee for the call. Good luck.
And they're off. There goes Athletically Inclined from the outside, and she is the strongest lever. Crown Lady from the rail pacing out. In between horses there is JK Sound of Music. She's going to slide in against the pylons in 3rd. Racing in 4th under a huge hold as Reilly's Daughter is keen to go on for Andy Miller. Dropping in at the rail in 5th is Save My Shark in front of She's a BRAGN Dragon. Feeling You unhurried early in 7th. Mystical MJ follows along in 8th. Love You Always gaps slightly in the 9th spot, and Emilio Stride rounds out the field. Crown Lady right back out and rolling for the retake, and the quarter was comfortable at just 28-2. Athletically Inclined cleared between calls. She's now back racing in second. JK Sound of Music sticks with the top pair in third as they stretch out a bit on the backstretch. 2 more lengths to Riley's Daughter in fourth. Save My Shark is fifth, and here she comes, edging to the outside for T-Treg. She's a BRAGN Dragon, picks up that cover to follow. Feeling You showing the whip. She's third over on the outside, racing in seventh. Unable to keep pace, Mystical MJ, who gaps away. Love You Always gets around her, and Emilio Stride forced to pull to the outside from 10th as they hit the half-mile marker in 57-2. So Campbell and Crown Lady controlling the front end, and they're a length clear. Athletically Inclined is riding that pocket spot in second. Up on the outside is Save My Shark first over, and she's now racing into the second spot there as they head toward three-quarters. She's a BRAGN Dragon second over on the outside. Feeling You is climbing all over her back. JK Sound of Music pinned right now on the pylons. No place to go. 3 lengths from the lead. Love You Always is fourth over. Also trapped in is Riley's Daughter. 3/4 in 1:26-3. And it's Crown Lady, but they're swarming in on her as they come to the top of the stretch. Save My Shark has taken command for T-Treg. In between horses, Athletically Inclined trying to come through. And Feeling You kicks off cover for Sears on the outside. In between them, She's a BRAGN Dragon. JK Sound of Music dives to the inside. It's Feeling You to the lead. JK Sound of Music up the rail. Feeling You, Feeling You, Feeling You to win it. JK Sound of Music second. Tight for third, Riley's Daughter or Save My Shark, 154-2.
6-2 and a photo for third between the 3 Riley's Daughter and the 4 Save My Shark, but Feeling You does get the victory. Prices coming up in just a little bit. Let's head back to the gentleman. Todd?
And back to the phone calls here on Racing Roundtable. We now join Paul in New Jersey. Paul, thank you for calling in about exchange wagering. What's your question?
Hi.
Hi, how you doing this evening?
Hi, how are you?
Doing all right. What's your question about exchange wagering?
It's not really so much exchange wagering. I'm just wondering, do you think that the system is obsolete? For example, show wagering. When you get a horse at 210, what's the point?
Well, from the pari-mutuel point, and this is what you have said from the very beginning, Stephen Byrne, is that there hasn't been much innovation in the world of thoroughbred racing in America. As far as the pari-mutuel system, we take a pick 3, turn it into a pick 4. We take a pick 4, turn it into a pick 5. There's really nothing truly innovative about that. And so as he points out, maybe just the pari-mutuel system is broken in some ways when you have those choices. So exchange wagering takes the leap that the industry needs.
I don't think it's obsolete, but I do think it's in need of innovation, and I think we can, we can bring something to the table with exchange wagering by modernizing pari-mutuel and bringing a different dynamic to it. So, if Paul is saying that 210 is a bad price for him on show betting, then obviously if that race goes in play, it's quite unlikely that 210 is going to stay at the price. At some point during the race, a horse is either going to look like it's going to finish in the show places or it's not going to finish in the show places, and those odds are going to fluctuate. So you don't have to always settle for such a low price. But if you like specializing in low prices, then you can just grind it out and try and make a small profit over a long term by either backing or laying accordingly. So, I understand his frustration. The show markets have such small pools as well sometimes, or you have show plungers that distort the pools. But we think that we can freshen that up and bring a different dynamic through exchange wagering.
Well, I think it's funny is, within the racing industry, we always hear complaints about, two of the things you hear a lot is, we're not getting any new fans. We're not getting any younger fans, and you don't see any innovation from a technology standpoint. And as a bettor, it's always disappointing when you see odds drops after the races, and we understand why it happens. It's because when the money's being reported, the bet's being reported, it's right after the gates close, but you see the odds changing during the race. Whereas you look at Betfair, and Tom, you can answer this better than I could. There's thousands of bets that are being processed. How many bets are processed in a 15-second span? Or
sure. So up to peak times, we're matching 5,000 bets, in a 10-second period.
Yeah. So, you consider that. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting was I read the stat that the average age of a Betfair horse racing customer is 18 years younger than the average TVG customer. So right there, to me, that's the greatest statistic that Betfair can provide, is that they are hitting a new audience. It's a different person that is betting, and it's our best chance to get those people involved in the sport that we all love. And from a TV standpoint, what circles back to people like you, Todd, is how do we get those people that don't normally bet horse racing, that are now betting, how are we going to get them interested in that guaranteed pick 4? How are we going to get them interested in that pick 6 carryover? How are we going to get them to play bets that they weren't planning on betting because they're now watching TVG and betting on the exchange?
And Stephen, I think it's very important on this 3-year anniversary of Betfair becoming the parent company of TVG. You've also said this is a looking forward proposition. In other words, Betfair is in it for the long-term health of thoroughbred racing. This is not something once exchange wagering comes into being that we're going to see overnight results that are going to astonish the industry. This is about growth looking forward.
Yeah, I mean, I often get asked by the industry how much money is going to go back to the sport, how successful is it going to be? And we don't know. We can make all kinds of projections. Brainiacs like Tom, who are, math geniuses and great whizzes, can come up with all kinds of graph charts and projections. But I'm really skeptical as to what that means until we see it in the open marketplace. I think it's like running a marathon race. If somebody says, how fast are you going to run the 26 miles and 365 yards or whatever it is of a marathon, I'll say it depends where it is. If the marathon is around a flat course in Berlin, it's going to be 2 hours and 3 minutes if you're, the world champion and you're the world record holder. But if that course is up and down Mount Everest, it's going to take a lot longer than 2 hours and 3 minutes to cover over the same ground. So for us, I think it depends on whether you get support from the racing industry, whether everybody's aligned, whether we can appeal to the fans, whether we can help sell the concept and get them to embrace what it is that we're trying to bring to the market. But ultimately, if customers don't want it and they think that we're selling them a pup, then the thing won't work. Similarly, if we can't find the right way of returning money back to the sport and helping to sustain the industry, it won't work either. We'll only thrive in the US and elsewhere if there's a healthy racing industry. We want to try and work together with this thing.
By the way, I think Tony has a smart aleck comment.
Did you say that we'd be selling them a pup?
I don't know.
Yeah, let's cut him off.
It's classic English. What is a pup? Just get an education, for goodness sake. What are you people doing with your education system here in the US?
Email in and let us know what selling a pup means.
Anyone with a classical education will be able to tell you that. I'm not telling you.
We do have a phone call. I want to get to one more phone call. We've gone way over on this edition of Racing Roundtable. We have to leave it with one more phone call, and it was sparked by watching that in-play example from the 2009 Breeders' Cup Classic. Joining us on the line is Frank from Tacoma. What is your question about exchange wagering, Frank?
Yes, Todd. Who predicts and gives out the odds in the split seconds that the races are going? Like, for example, when you see the backtracker Zenyatta being played, who puts the odds up real fast and the other one's going down real fast? Is it done by a professional computer or, handicapper, or is it fed in by the running lines of a horse? It just seems awful interesting to figure out how that works. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. And, okay, Tom addressed that, and then, Tony, you have to address it, too, because I think there's the impression we're going to be seeing that during the middle of a race while we're showing it on TVG. But Tom first.
So the odds are 100% determined by the players. They're changing because there's other players agreeing to take those wagers as the race unfolds, but there's nothing that Betfair's doing to stimulate any odds in that market other than matching the players together. So it's 100% determined by
So visually, Tony, how would we see it if we're making an in-play wager, those odds changing?
I don't think we'll do a lot of it live on the show. I think that you'll see a lot of it in replay fashion. Anybody who's watched any of our summer UK racing series, which, by the way, Stephen, you did a great job.
Oh, thank you. You and Frank Lyons were phenomenal.
Yeah.
Anybody who saw that, saw how we handled that. It's more of a post-race. It's a great conversation piece, and it's very good. From a live standpoint, I think it's debatable how we'd be able to use that. I think we'll, and even from a replay standpoint, I don't think you're going to see every single race that we're going to be doing that. And to Stephen's point, I don't think we want to get to the point where we're the exchange network and everything is about the exchange. But you also have to keep in mind that if you're a person like Frank, who's calling from Tacoma, Washington, where he will not be able to bet the exchange, it's going to be interesting to see the difference in the odds that are available on the exchange compared to the tote betting. So it's no different than nowadays when we look up to see what double will pays are and pick 3 will pays, and we see a horse has gotten a lot of action in the exotics, and that makes a horse more playable in the win pool. I think it's going to work that way as well. So the sharp bettors out there, even if they can't bet with the exchange, they're going to look at the exchange odds and use that when they're betting their bets.
One thing I just want to add on who does and doesn't offer prices in play, though, one of the things that we do elsewhere in the world, and we'd look eventually to do here, is we have a thing called keep bets, which means that you can, before the race starts, say I'm prepared to accept certain prices on a horse. Maybe it's a 3-to-1 favourite going into the race, but you think maybe from its running style it might hit 8, 9, or 10-to-1 in play and then still win the race. You can leave an offer price up there and you'll be first in the line in order to get your bets matched. So it's fastest finger first, but you don't have to make these bets as the race is going on. You can leave an order up there in advance in anticipation that the horse might hit those odds. If it does, your bet will get matched. If it doesn't, then it won't get matched. It's been really frustrating for me sometimes when I'll get a little greedy, I think I'm being clever, and I'll ask for, say, 10-to-1 about an even money favourite. it doesn't run very well in the early part of the race and it maybe trades out to 8 or 9 to 1, I go back thinking I'm going to see an account with a lot of money on it, but it never hit 10 to 1 and the bet never got matched. So it becomes a little bit of an art to try and anticipate what's going to happen with the market in play as well.
It's a fascinating topic. It's an evolving story. Exchange wagering. We thank you for playing a part in this discussion of exchange wagering on Racing Roundtable. We hope you'll join us next week as well. The topic will change, and it's one that gets a lot of opinions and questions. Drugs in horse racing. Join us next week, but in the meantime, if you have questions or comments about drugs in horse racing, email or send them a video link of your questions to our experts who will be on next week's show, roundtable@tvg.com. Again, we'll be back Friday, February 3rd, 5 o'clock Pacific time. My thanks to Andy Cunningham, Head of Integrity for Betfair, Tom Large, Director of the U.S. Exchange for Betfair, Stephen Byrne, TVG CEO, and Tony Olivato, Executive Vice President of Television for Racing Roundtable. I'm Todd Schrupp. Until next time, may all your photo finishes be winning ones.